All right, guys, let's give this a try. This is David Vizard's original beta version of his IOP program. David gave me this program first from anyone to try to figure it out, get the bugs out of it, and I worked directly with Stan Weiss, and it was an interesting experience. I have to get a newer version from Stan, but this is the actual original version that I loaded on an ancient computer that's having HDMI issues with the TV. So, what I felt like doing was comparing a bone stock Dart 215. Okay? Now, the things that you have to input: port volume, intake valve size, intake stem diameter, throat diameter, the length of the port. I'm going to have to show you guys how we do the length of the port. Measure the top of the port, measure the bottom of the port, and we take the average. Bore diameter, that's from my bore adapter. That's all I have is a 411. Exhaust port volume, exhaust port valve size, throat diameter. And then it gets into details, how big it is, how size, corner radiuses, and so forth. And then, of course, the flows. And I was thinking, why don't we take a stock 215, which is known to have a good reputation for performance, and put it up against the EQ Vortec that I just worked on. So that would be flow test number 2. Okay, I think I do have a mistake on here. I think the throat diameter is wrong. Let's just fix that. Not that that's really going to make a huge difference, but okay. Now we're going to save data. No, that's not what I want. Okay, EQ.
Say she was so upset about the way he was behaving that she had a miscarriage.
That's the idea, but
Ordered. NP is not perfect
that would have really caused
because the numbers on there are not perfect.
That's what you're trying to say.
Yes, I'd like to replace it. Okay, now at least we got the throat ratio right. Okay, and now I just have to make a calculated thing, and we're ready to rock and roll. Okay, same thing, right? 166 port, 194, 59.5 exhaust port, 1.5 valve. Stem diameter's right, throats are right, port lengths are right. Entrance and exit of the port heights, they're good. Okay, the program itself does all these calculations. Okay. Let's take a look at next page. Swirl. Actually, the swirl, I'll take credit for that because I thought that needed to be in the IOP program. It originally wasn't in there. I added it, and then, of course, my swirl meter broke, so I can't even enter that. I have to get that fixed. Okay, let's exit that. Okay, so what we're going to do is, these are the flows from the last time I flowed the EQ. Now, all we have to do is tell the program, compare to flow tests. Okay, I already labeled them on the bottom, Dart 215. So the two on the left, the two columns on the left are the Dart 215s. The two columns on the right are the EQ Vortec. We have compare flow test 1, compare flow test 2. We're going to take a look at CFM first. We're going to tell it to calculate. Then we're going to tell it to graph. And there we go. The thin lines are the 215s. Okay? And the thick lines are the ported Vortex. Now, what I'd like you guys to pay attention to is, let's say we use a 550 lift cam, which is a decent lift cam for a street engine, right? He wants it to be a torque motor. So let's take a look at the graph, 550. Okay, the 215s definitely have me by a few CFM. No doubt. But take a look at the rest of this curve. Okay? The Vortex have a nice lead as far as CFM. I mean, if you go at this point right here, right, it's from 162 on the 215 to how much? Let's take a step back. Where was I? 218, 228. That by 10 CFM with a way smaller port. That's a 215 versus a 166. I'm sorry, 166 is stock. I'm sure it's not 166. Remember I wrote not perfect? What I wound up doing is I started entering all this stuff into the program, but the port lengths aren't 100% right because those were an unported port and the volume isn't right. So this is going to be, it's not perfect, but it'll give you an idea. Okay, let's say I bet we're not more than 175, but I'm not going to change. Well, let's change it. Let's change it. Let's go back. Let's make two changes because I know those volumes aren't right. And I apologize for that, guys. I'm going to say we're about 176 on that, and I'm going to say we are about 63 here. Okay. Now we're going to have it calculate. We're going to have it save data. Say save. Yes. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Now let's get back to business. Okay, compare two flow tests. Okay, none of this has changed. The only thing that's changed is the later graphs, right? So we can see how well we did on our intake and our exhaust. Our exhaust absolutely dominates the Dart 215. And the Dart 215 is a pretty good size exhaust port. Okay? Not only is our exhaust port smaller, it has a smaller valve, right? And it flows better. Okay, let's take a look at per square inch CFM. Now what this is basically what we're looking at right now is the efficiency at the valve seat. Okay? The two narrow lines are the Dart, and the exhaust is pretty good. All right, you got a decent amount of velocity on your exhaust. The intake is not great. And take a look at what we did on the EQs. My radius exhaust really works well. Just saying. Okay, let's move on to another important thing is, well, all of these even out only because I don't have numbers for these. So this is the same number. But you see the way this is starting to go up? This is starting to go up. This looks like it was going up and then it stopped. Those curves should go up. Okay, that would show you that you have plenty of bias on the port. Okay. Now, he's got velocity. Okay, port velocity. Now, port velocity is obviously really important. The rule of thumb is you'd like your ports to be about 300 feet per second. It's a round number. that was originally, I can't think of his name. This guy did airplane engines. Oh, he wrote a lot of books on airplane engines and so forth. I can't think of his name. Oh, alrighty. Now take a look at the dart velocity versus the EQ port velocity. Okay, noticeably different. Okay, big difference. The whole curve, right? And take a look at the exhaust port. The exhaust port for the 215 is pretty good. Come on, computer. The computer's having a little interface issue and a dead battery. Okay. In either case, both of the EQ curves are way ahead of the Dart 215. Now, mind you, that's an unported, that's an as cast head. Okay. Okay. Port energy. Okay, now what is port energy? Port energy is the amount of energy the air column is going to contain. It's a combination of the mass and its velocity, okay, over the length of the port. Okay, now we would like high port energy numbers because what that's going to tell us is it's going to keep the direction of flow, okay? When we have high port energy, that's going to cut back on our reversion, okay? And the more port energy we have, the more energy the column of air going through the intake valve is going to have and can fill our cylinder more. So if you take a look at this, the only place the 215 beats us is a little bump at like 550 lift. Other than that, our intake completely dominates it in port energy, and our exhaust is even better. Okay, port energy density. This is a similar calculation, but it eliminates the length of the port from the equation. Okay? And if we look at it, this is port energy foot-pounds per square inch per foot of port length. Okay, DV could do a better job explaining it than me, but the part that I like is notice the thick curves completely kick butt on the Dart. See, Charlie was obsessing, worrying that those heads weren't enough to make the customer happy. I think I could probably put that to bed at this point. Okay, and this is actually velocity at the valve seat calculated. Okay, notice the Dart exhaust is pretty good. You get 440 out of it. My exhaust with the radius is way better at 550. Okay, and the intake is better as well. So, what we can do, we can go back. We can go back to this page, okay, and I can put in the mean port area and the bore and the stroke, and it'll calculate up exactly how many horsepower and so forth it is. Let me just snap a picture of that page, and we'll go back and we'll enter that, and we'll see how we did. Come on, phone. Okay.
No, my workers won't stand for it. If they're not happy, then they're free to find employment elsewhere. Darwin is the football club, and then that's all there is. There's no place else.
Okay, mean port area.
See, you say that as an insult. propose another 5% cut. I'll need to study the fees.
Members of the guild must abide by the majority decision. All those in favour of a 10% cut.
Okay. 1 point.
Aye.
Come on. It's 2.9. I'm going to pause this, guys. Okay, guys. So, mean port area is 1.96. Bore and stroke on a 383 be 430. 375. Figure about a 10.5 compression ratio for the street. We're going to have CFM peak as of right now is 243. Obviously, that doesn't take into consideration losses from the intake manifold. Okay. We can go through a few things that are important on this. Mean piston speed, 3,500, no problem. Best torque output, 520. Now, if you read these, this assumes you're using a cam that's right on the money, such as David Vizard's cam, Torque Master cam program. Okay. Cylinder head port area horsepower limitation 488. This is limited power set by limited port speed Mach number. Okay, so this should be set. The Mach number is already set at 0.547. That's 54% speed of sound. Okay, cylinder head airflow limitations 559 horsepower. Now, if we think back, Larry Moe was doing, he had 250 CFM on the 041X heads and getting 580. So, as crazy as that sounds, that is attainable. And notice the torque per cube, 1.35. I'd actually like to get that up over 1.4, but that's not a bad number. 1.359 is not bad. That's 1.28 horse per cube. Okay, take a look at peak horsepower is 5605. Shift speed is 6,000. He didn't want to rev it over 6,500. So I think the way it's sitting now, he asked for 400 horsepower. I think we're in relatively good shape. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.